But goddamn, get it done, will ya? Woo. When the blow up now, everybody's so unusual with it. Shit. But said times in his rhymes, cause his memories. We running through New York.
Okay guys, so here we are with the BMW N52 engine. Now, as you guys remember from my previous video, this car had a misfire. Now, there's a lot to that, as I explained to you. It can be a vanosyners, it could be a fuel injector, which is very unlikely, especially on these engines. It can be many things that could cause a misfire, even a vacuum leak. But we end up diagnosing that it was an ignition coil. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna change the spark plugs, and we're gonna go ahead and change the ignition coils. Now, the reason I'm changing all of them parts is because as time goes on, as mileage goes on, the more miles you do, the spark plugs and ignition coils are used for the ignition, and obviously burn off the fuel and air mixture, therefore to create the bang in the engine, create the spark, which then creates the power. Now, as they weaken down over the years, you will start losing your acceleration and more power. So therefore, I'm replacing all these parts to actually overhaul this engine. Now, I only changed it roughly around 30k ago. Now, there's one thing that you guys saw on my previous N52 videos that I'm doing different today, and I'm going to go through and explain to you what that is, and I'm going to show you what that is as we come along to it. And then you're going to be probably having to change this yourself long term when your next change is due. So let's go ahead and start the video, and I'm going to show you what you need to do. So obviously the first thing you're going to want to do is get the engine cover off. Now, this one is already off based on the fact that I took it off previously and we haven't been using the car due to the misfire. So we're going to take this one off. Now, we're also going to have to take all these plastics off along here, along the engine bay. We're also going to have to take all the trimmings off because, as you can see there, the back spark plug, which is number 6, is to underneath the plastic, so the plastics have to come off. So it will just be this top side here that's going to have to come off because it's in the way of the 6 spark plug. So we're going to go ahead and take this plastic trim off right here so we can get access to the 6 ignition coil. Now, a lot of you guys are thinking I'm changing them all. That's not the case. I'm only changing 3, and I'm changing these 3 here on the back, and that's purely because I know these 3 are fine. These will replace last after these 3. So it's going to be these 3 that are probably going, and I believe 2 of them I didn't actually change because they were good. So we're going to go ahead and remove this plastic casing right now. So if any of you guys don't know, it's just a flathead to pop that off, and then this will come off. You just want to disconnect all the wiring, which is your AUC sensor and your bonnet switch, which is for the alarm as well. So make sure you keep that and don't lose it, and don't lose your AUC sensor. So don't throw this down anywhere that you're going to lose that little sensor. It is quite expensive to actually buy for a little sensor. It's like £60, so just be careful with that. So you're going to need your 30mm socket, which is right here, and you're going to need to release this bolt and this bolt here, which actually pulls the plastic down. So we're going to go ahead and just release them, which they're now released, and that's now released. Then you're going to want to pull this trim up with this clip right here. You'll see there's a clip that you just pull it up and pull it off, and it will come off. Now, you do have another 30mm nut up here, but you ain't going to need to actually remove that because you're only taking this trim off. Now, this one has a Torx, which I believe is a Torx 20, so we're going to go ahead and get a Torx 20 and just release this one right here. So there's the little Torx 20 I was on about. Make sure you keep this safe because you're going to need this to bolt this back down to the car chassis to actually hold the plastic down. Now, after you've done that, you just want to remove the little plastic liner, which is right here. And then all you're going to want to do is just pull up like that and move this out of the way. As you will see right there, it's now moved. Now, I do have this engine wiring loom in the way, which we can just pull off because I removed the clips. Now, that's not going to be in the way for us so much. We can now get to the ignition coils. We might have to release this strut bra here, but we'll try and see if we can do that without removing it. I'm pretty sure we can. So we're just going to go ahead and remove the ignition coils first. So we're going to take them out one by one over this side, and we're also going to take out the other coils as well. So you'll see here I've got a 16mm socket right here with a long extension on it as well as my ratchet, and we're going to be using this because we're going to be changing the spark plugs. So what you're going to want to do is to release your ignition coils first, and you're just going to want to pull the wiring out, which they can be quite stiff, but that one just come out quite easily. Take your ignition coils out, and if you look right in here, this is what actually makes the contact with the spark plug to create this 12-volt supply needed to actually fire each spark plug and each cylinder in turn to create the power for your engine. Now, Usually what ends up happening is that ends up going faulty, because as you see here, there's a 12-volt plug. And like I say, over time, these wear down. This one's fine, this one's fine, and that one's fine. So we're gonna get them all out anyway, which is what we wanna do. If they don't come out, you can use a screwdriver just to prise them off, as you would have seen in my previous video. And you just take them all out. Then what we're gonna go ahead and do is get the spark plugs out. So the spark plugs are located here. They're a 16mm socket, and you're gonna wanna use an extension. The way I usually do is unloosen them, and then I'll get a magnet and lift them up and pull them out. So as you see here, this is a magnet tool, and this is just fine to use to get the spark plugs out. So you'll see right there, there's one of them right there. We've got that one out. Be careful, they will be hot, especially if you just started your engine. So if you'll see right there, you've now got the spark plug, and if you can see, that's burning perfectly fine. That's the color your spark plug should be when you actually take them out. If they're any other color, like a white or a very dark black or oily, it means you've got oil going in the chambers. If they're white, it means the car is over fueling, which isn't good and can actually damage your engine. Now, if you want to use another tip to get your spark plugs out once they're loosened, you can actually put these in. If you'll see right here, this is an old trick in the mechanics we used to use. And if you latch onto the coil, and if you see, that one's fine as well. So we've now got that one, which is perfectly fine. So we've got two spark plugs out, which are burning perfectly fine. So we'll put that one down here. We'll just get the other one out. So as you'll see, this is cylinder 3, and it is quite a bit black. We are going to be changing it. This one is got a bit of oil in it. Now, cylinder 3 has always really had a problem, especially on this car since I've ever bought it. So this one is quite black, so we're going to be changing that one as well. So as you'll see here, I've not got Bosch brand new spark plugs. All of them are Bosch. They're all going to be going into their chambers. And then what we're going to be doing is putting ignition coils back on. Now, I will link these in the description for you guys to go and buy. So something a lot of you guys probably don't remember is, a long time ago, I said to you about using these spark plugs on your BMW. Now, these are the 4 electrodes, which you'll see right here, and everyone went crazy trying to ask me where you could buy them. So what I've now figured out, and what BMW have advised me, is those are no longer being used. So if you see right here, this is the one that actually BMW are now using and BMW recommend. So if you look at both of them, you'll probably notice the difference of both of them. Now, these are the ones I did tell you to go and use previously when I first started YouTube, and I've been using them, as you see, perfectly in my engine. These are now the ones that BMW recommend with a single electrode, and these are the ones we're now switching over to. They don't no longer do these ones, so do not be ashamed if you can't find them and you can't put them in your BMW, as you cannot no longer get these ones. So, you know, therefore you have to use the single electrical ones. So when installing these, again, you're just going to want to use a magnet, which I tend to use, and you're just going to want to drop them inside the spark plug hole, or you can use your finger and you can just drop them into the spark plug hole and then just tighten them up by hand. As I always tell everyone, do not tighten them with anything else. Tighten them up by hand first before you tighten them down with a wrench. Now, you may want to put anti-seize on it, it just depends, but I don't, because I know I'm going to change them frequently. So as you see that they're all done, so we're going to go ahead and replace the ignition coils, which are just going to go straight into the engine bay here. And then all you're going to want to do is reconnect your connectors up like that. It's the first one in, then the second one right there, then your third one. Now we're going to go for the fourth one, which the fourth one's located over here. Now, we may need a screwdriver to just prise that out. So I'm going to get a screwdriver and just prise the connector off. And now to get the ignition coil out, you can put a screwdriver underneath it and pull it up like that. So that's number 4 coil. And sometimes the clips do come off, as you saw there. They're very easy to put back on, so you don't get scared and think you broke it. The clip comes off. And as you see there, that one's now tightened. Now what we're going to do is replace the ignition coil into the section like that. Then we're just going to put the connector back on, and that's done. Now what we're going to do is go to number 5, which is over the back here. So if you can see right here, this is number 5, and we're going to be taking that one out. So we're just going to undo that one, and we're just going to put that to the side. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and get a smaller extension on that, because what we're going to want to do is be able to get in there without taking the crossbar off. So as you can see there, there's a shorter extension. And as you can see, it drops straight into the bottom there with no issues. So now all we need to do is get our ratchet on it. And then just break it loose, as you see. Now that one's loose, we can then just unscrew it. And if you can see there, this spark plug's very, very badly black, which means we've got a problem on cylinder number 4 as well, which is going to need to be sorted out because that is covered in black. So I need to diagnose what the issue is. Got a feeling the CCV is going bad because it's only happened during winter. So this could be a CCV issue. I'm going to have to later on diagnose and find out what the reason is for that. Or it could be a top up of oil too high. It could be many things. Just need to figure it out. You can see there, I'm now going to put the new spark plug in. Now that's tight. Now what we're going to do is to tighten it back up. We're just going to put a long extension in here. Get our big ratchet. As you see there, that one's now tightened as well. Okay, so as you see here, we've got Bosch ignition coils we're going to be replacing on all the 2 cylinders we've just replaced. So we're going to replace number 4, a new ignition coil in there. Now a top tip here is if you don't have issues with your old ignition coils, keep them, because you can use them for test. If you ever get a car and it's got a misfire, you can actually test it. So I'm going to keep these as spares, purely because I like to keep ignition coils the same as I've got on my M5, because they're always good to be used in case you get a misfire. We've also got another ignition coil. Now the one I'm going to actually pull out from that cylinder, I'm not going to be keeping, because that one was bad anyway. So we're just going to install this into here again and put the harness back on. Make sure the wiring is completely pushed in, otherwise you will get a misfire and your car won't start properly. So make sure the wiring harness is actually pushed all the way in. Now, I do have the last one at the back here, and we got that one out. Now we're going to be replacing that one as well. So this is a good working one. Put that in this box and keep it with the other working one. Now we're going to get the spark plug out of this hole. Firstly, so you're going to want to use your small extension, then your big extension, and then unloosen it. As you see there, that one's burning perfectly with no issue. I do have the other spark plug to go in. As I said, we're replacing all 6 while we're in here. So we can leave that. New ignition coil to go in, which we'll put in now. Just go back and check all your connectors to make sure everything is seated in the spark plug holes, so no oil will ever get in there. And that's the job done, guys. That's all your spark plugs actually replaced on the car, as well as your ignition coils. All you're going to want to do is actually tidy up now all the engine bay that you will see that you've left, that you've took apart. We're going to put the engine cover back on firstly, and then that's it, guys. We're going to start the engine up and it should be good to go. So here you have the end result, guys. And as you can see there, some are darkened, some are lighter than others. This is why I believe you should not wait every 100,000 miles to change your spark plugs. These will control your fuel to air mixture, because these are responsible for burning the fuel and igniting the fuel that goes into the combustion chamber. So if these are bad, you're going to get a rough idle and you're not going to get the power you expect from your car. That's why I therefore recommend you should change these every at least 20k like I have, otherwise they can end up like that. And this could be the cause of your rough idle right there, or you're having it oiled up and not burning properly, and you don't want that. You want it to burn clean. These are also bad for inspection, so if you go for MOT or inspection, these can end up making you fail based on the fact they're not producing clean fuel and air mixture, and they're burning dirty, or they're not burning the fuel properly. Therefore, I do recommend to change these before inspection as well. Okay guys, so as you've seen there, I've just shown you how to change your ignition coils and your spark plugs on your BMW N52. Now, this will apply to other engines as well, of the N series, because they're very, very similar, and the spark plugs and the ignition coils are located basically in the same position on a lot of cars. This doesn't just apply for BMW, but at the end of the day, this will give a lot more power and acceleration to your car, especially if you are down on power. If you have failed the emissions or failed your inspection, that could be the reason why as well, because as you saw in them spark plugs, if they're black, they won't be firing properly, i.e. they won't be burning the fuel and air mixture which enters the combustion chamber properly, therefore causing it to overfuel, which will cause it to fail the emissions or inspection or the smog test in the USA because of that reason. Therefore, I do believe on doing a tune-up. This is called the old Italian tune-up. BMW are known for giving dodgy coils. You might go for inspection or MOT and then find you've got a dodgy ignition coil after the MOT, or it's misfiring after they've been accelerating it to check for smog or emissions. So I therefore recommend to check your ignition coils if you do have a misfire and you can't find the coils. Thank you very much for watching. This BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.